Hi, my name is Ngina Mwaluko, one half of the Disruptors, and today we're with Youth Plus Radio for Connect One-on-One, and our guest today is a wonderful Immanuel Momanyi. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ngina. Hey, everyone. My name is Immanuel Momanyi. I work for a company called Villgro Africa. We're an impact investor and a healthcare business incubator. Yeah, based in Nairobi. So we basically support startups and different innovators in the healthcare space to save lives.
Okay. So before we get into the startup business,
Yes.
I'd like to take you back. So there's a photo here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you can just have a look at it, and then you can take us back to young Immanuel.
Young Emmanuel.
Yes.
So I don't know whether people can see this, but this was me back in JKUAT Karen. I was doing actuarial science back in the day. And what can I say? I don't know why, first of all, my friends allowed me to have that hairstyle. I used to blow dry it at some point to just make it easy to style it. Pretty much back in campus, yeah.
Okay, so what was your journey like from JKUAT Karen all the way to where you are now? Why did you choose to work with startups?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how I got here, but I kind of have a feeling that it started back in campus. Back then, or maybe let's go back to high school. You know, the Science Congress thing, I think I participated, actually went all the way to nationals with a nice innovation. I did agriculture in high school. I know it's not necessarily the coolest thing among the young people, but I had an innovation on automated irrigation. And so I know I've always really liked the innovation space and trying to identify problems and solve that. So in campus, I got an opportunity to work with an organization called Save a Child's Heart. I was doing that on a volunteer basis. And that's how I got into healthcare, because we were supporting babies. I was actually the only employee. We were supporting babies to go to Israel for free heart surgeries. And it was an opportunity to, as the only employee, you have so many problems. And so you have to find a solution, because my boss wasn't always around. And I had to coordinate babies from all over the country, because they weren't babies from Nairobi necessarily. We had people from Turkana coming in. And so pretty much that's how I got into healthcare, then moved on to my first employment in Zamara, where I used to basically in the consulting department, actuarial consulting. And all we did was work with pension funds. But I think what changed work-wise was when I went to Open Capital and we started working with small businesses, and I got into the real business world and started to identify or started to learn how to support startups, then moved on to Villgro Africa, where we are working with startups. And I know this is a general conversation around startups, but Villgro really focuses on healthcare startups. And so that made the foundation of mostly actually Open Capital developed or really, as it really influenced my whatever I'm doing today, like in terms of growing my skills, opening up the opportunities, and some of the projects that I actually worked on, some of the methodologies we used there are the same that we're actually applying in supporting the startups that we are supporting currently.
That's beautiful. So you've mentioned that you've always had something for innovation.
Yes.
As many young people do. And they have these brilliant ideas, but now turning them into a real thing.
Yeah.
That's where things get tricky.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you were mentoring a first-time founder, what's the first thing you'd tell them?
That's a really interesting question. And I think for me, the most important thing is that you are solving a real problem. And the problem needs to be big enough to warrant the solution existing. So for example, perhaps that seat that you're seated on right now is not necessarily the most comfortable, right? You might think of innovating a different type of seat, but is that really is that problem big enough to warrant you going out of your way to develop a whole new seat, right? When maybe so many other seats exist where someone could actually just go replace the seat that you're sitting on, right? So for me, it needs to be that it's a problem that it's big enough to warrant that solution to exist. But beyond that, the most important thing is that people are willing to pay for it. It's not enough that the problem is big enough. What is most important is actually that people will be willing to pay for it. And so for me, I will work with the founder to just make sure that they are testing out, because it's important that you test out in a small environment or a small market, and to just make sure that that solution is viable, or that business model is viable, that people can actually pay for it.
You just mentioned your CV in a sense, and so you've been in different countries.
Yes.
When you look at startups in Africa and even globally,
Yeah.
what's the one thing they have in common that that has really helped them take off?
Wow, that's a difficult one. But when you think about it, and taking off could be in so many ways. Could be either you're scaling or literally just growing as a business from the ground up. But ideally, what I've seen startups do so well, at least for those that are excelling well, I think what they do is being obsessed with their customers. Any successful business has to somehow really understand their customers and work to build that customer base and do exactly what that customer base actually wants. So if you are not obsessed with your customers, people will not actually give referrals for your solution. People will not recommend you to other people. Ideally, people won't be willing to pay for that solution. So I think the first thing is to always be that the customer is the person driving that business. And so with changing times, you also then need to be adaptable, right? If customers now, so in the case of Carrefour, for example, when they came in as a business, as a supermarket, at some point they actually had to start offering home deliveries, right? Because if you stay without offering that solution, other businesses are actually innovating around that, home deliveries for what would be the retail products. And so you have to still remain adaptable, change with the changing times. But all this is not going to be possible if you are not actually feeding what your customers want. They are the people that actually should drive demand.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So it's all about the customer experience.
I think for me, yes. I think as long as your customers are happy, you're in business. You'll then be able to grow organically. I know funding is an element that you will need to grow that business, like scale especially. But before we even get to the point where we are raising funds, we need to have proved our model to make sure that people are willing to pay for it and we have a nice customer. Maybe we proved that in a small market and we have exhausted that market and it's time for us to grow, right? All that doesn't happen unless you have actual paying customers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that you've mentioned funding,
Yeah.
we know for very many businesses, startups, this is a very major thing.
Yes.
And there are various forms of funding. There is applying for grants, there is bootstrapping.
Yeah.
What would you tell a young entrepreneur to choose when it comes to funding, and why?
Honestly, it depends. It depends on the business, but all of them have pros and cons. So if you're bootstrapping, you're not giving, of course, the benefit is you're not giving away equity, you're not giving the stake of your business. But the thing is, we live in Africa, not all of us have unlimited resources, right? So it just means that you have limited resource and you will not be able to grow your business as much without external funding. If you're taking money from angel investors or VCs, you're getting a lot of capital, but you're giving away your stake, the stake of your business, right? If you're going for non-diluting funding like grants, they are really nice, but they're so competitive to actually get. And so if you haven't especially proved your model and you have like a business that is actually working, then it becomes really difficult. But here is what we always advise people, especially the innovators that we work with, that you use bootstrapping to prove your business model as the very first thing. And the reason for that is if I have an idea and I want you to fund an idea and I'm actually not putting money into that idea, it's like I don't have a stake in it. There's something that we call one of the principles of insurance. It's called insurable interest. You need to have an interest in that product so that when it gets lost, you feel some pain if it's getting lost or getting spoiled. So it's the same thing as in a business. You need to have put in your money. And actually, some investors, when they see you that you've actually put some of your money in the business, they know that you have your skin in it, right? You've basically put your heart and soul in it. So after bootstrapping and you've sort of proved your business model, what we always advise is maybe now it's time to apply for grants to grow your business a little bit. And it's easier to get this grant because you have proved your model.
Yeah. So
it's not the opposite. It's not to get the grant to prove the model. It is now you actually have traction that you can show, and someone, a development partner, can give you a grant to then scale that. After that, you can then now go to private capital, like venture capital, angel investors, who, of course, you're going to give out your stake, but then their capital can also be strategic. Some of these funders come with some strategic support where they could link you up with go-to-market partners or connect you to what would be partners that help you scale, even cross boundaries, right? And so that's when you can actually go out and get that diluting capital. So you kind of start with bootstrapping, apply for grants, and then go out to VCs and angel investors.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm a young entrepreneur, and I want to make sure that I'm really ready to grow. Yes. So give me a growth checklist. 3 steps that you would put in that
3 steps
checklist. Yeah.
Number 1, I would say that you need to have attained some product market fit. And product market fit is when you have, the story again revolves around customers, if you've noticed, is when you have customers that are actually willing, and not just willing, but they're actually paying for your product. So you have a lot of customers, or the number of customers is actually growing organically. And it's not just, you get a client who comes in with 90% of the profit or the revenues that you're generating. So it's like one spike, and then you call that product market fit. It needs to be actual customers, like a good number of customers that you can actually count, show some really good traction, that you would say, I've been able to serve 1 million customers or 500K, not just 100. And of the 100, it's one that is skewing the results, right? So number 1, you need to have attained the product market fit. And I think the second one that I would say is that you need to have some nice operational efficiency. So how can I say? So your operations internally as a business, they need to be able to support growth. So do you have systems or processes that are put in place on how you actually do things, right? So that if you want to grow beyond the few customers that you've been serving, your operations can actually support that growth. So you are not, maybe you have the right unit economics, for example. So, and this moves to the third point, which is really around financial sustainability. Your unit economics needs to be right. So take an example of, say, Glovo. And so sorry to use this as an example, but imagine a situation where Glovo charged or spent $5 to offer, let's just use Kenya shillings. They use 500 Kenya shillings to deliver food to you. And out of that, they are only making 300. So it costs them 500, but they only make 300. Essentially, that's a loss.
Yeah.
So some people imagine that if I expand and get more customers, I'll probably grow the revenues, right? But you are just growing the losses.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
If you look at it from one customer, you're still making a loss. So if you increase the number of customers, you're still making a loss. So I think it goes back to just getting your unit economics right. And so your cash flows will be maybe cash flow positive. They are stable. You can easily predict the amount of revenues you're generating. And then with that, you can then say, maybe it's time for me to expand, And then the other important thing, again, on those customers, that they are actually more than the capacity you have to offer a quality service, not just service. At times you could get a lot of customers that it reduces the quality of service you offer. So at the point where it gets to, I don't want to use the word equilibrium, but the demand that you're getting and the capacity you have to serve that demand, if that demand exceeds that capacity, then I think it's also an indication that it's time for you to, let's grow the business, let's scale a bit to either grow the team, go to other regions and all that, improve the technology that you have and all. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Nice.
I like that growth checklist. Okay, so we can get into one of the biggest startup killers, and not just killers in startup, also in life.
Yes.
We all know it's bad timing. Sometimes people are maybe scaling too fast or they're waiting too long. So how does a founder actually know when the time is right?
Time is right to scale.
Yeah.
I think I alluded to that in my previous response. I think the most important thing, let's start with, again, customers. If you have more customers than, say, you are operating within the Nairobi region, you have exhausted, like you've served as so many customers. Of course, maybe there will be competitors in the market, but you maybe become a household name within Nairobi. Your product attracts a lot of customers. People cannot live without that product. Perhaps it's time to then venture into Murang'a County, for example, or neighboring counties. If it's Kenya, maybe it's time to go to Uganda, Tanzania, or whichever market that would be that you've identified as the next market to go to. So ideally, that you need to be having some really good, some good traction in terms of customers, a lot of people that are interested in that product. Because if you don't have enough, if you have not exhausted that market in terms of customers, what business do you have to going somewhere else where the cost might actually be higher? You might actually be thinking that you're scaling, but you're just basically increasing the cost that you're actually going to use to offer the product. But the other thing is that your cash flows are positive or stable, again, just going back to that point. Because if you are able to have cash flows that are predictable, and you are able to run your business just based on the cash flows that are coming without necessarily going out there to look for external capital, like from investors, it could also be a sign of, it's time to scale. Like, let's actually scale. Because businesses that run on external capital alone, they are not necessarily having positive unit economics if you look at it. So they actually exist. Some of them are really big. I don't want to mention names, where they raise money to sustain the operation for a certain amount of time, then go back out there to look for money again for runway, right? But ideally, if you're looking at it, if you really just want to make a nice, successful business with positive performance, I would say just sorting that out, that unit economics, and then having some financial stability internally before, without the pressure of getting external capital, that is actually good. Then you can actually go out there to investors and say, this is how good we are performing, and we just need $5 million to scale to these other 5 other countries, But before that, sort out your internal issues. And the internal could also be that primary market that you're really serving it really well. Yeah.
You've worked with very many startups.
Yeah.
So what's the one mistake or a moment you've seen that when it comes to scaling, a moment where that made you think, that was a disaster waiting to happen?
Yeah, we've actually seen this with several startups, some of them in Kenya that have actually maybe closed down, where you go to investors and say, we want $10 million, we want to go to X, Y, and Z countries, but you actually do not know those markets. So you want to move to DRC, you've been given $5 million to go to DRC, then you realize when you go there, and sorry to use this, it doesn't have anything to do with DRC. Actually, let's call it country X. You go to country X and you realize before you actually get a license to operate, it costs you half the money. And because people want bribes, and it's not like a clear system, you actually didn't do a proper market study, or you didn't you want to go big without necessarily testing out in a small environment. So that actually costs you because you are not able to. And investors are waiting, especially if you've taken money from investors, they are waiting for returns. If you're not able to provide those returns, you can see how you start to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing is really understanding that market, conduct some research, understand your market properly, and all the specific nuances in all the different markets have specific nuances. You need to be able to know them so that you can then successfully scale or move into those markets. Yeah. So most important, test. Don't just go all in. Tests.
Yeah.
You have to test before you go in. Yeah.
Okay, so in life, people need people.
Yeah.
And so do startups.
That's true.
And this is where hiring comes in.
Yeah.
And hiring can be a bit tricky as well. It's a very big shift for any company.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you'd give a founder when it comes to giving out it's a fast hiring?
Yeah. I actually just want to go back a bit before we even start hiring. Team is really, really important for any business. Just making sure that you have the right team is so important, especially for us who are working with early stage startups. We do support even growth stage startups, but for a long time, we've really worked with early stage businesses. And it will interest you to know that we do not support the idea. We support the team. So one of the things we like to say is an A team will take a B product and make it an A product. But a B team cannot make the A product remain A. It will come down, right? And so that's how important a team is. So we invest in teams. So directly from the founder, you need to be able to understand, you have to have domain expertise, understand what you're building. We've seen people build solutions for ladies, and they're not ladies, right?
Well.
Or they don't even have a co-founders who are ladies.
Ladies, yes.
Right? So you're missing a lot of small details that a lady would actually tell you, right? So even from the way you're set up as the founding team, it needs to make sure that it's covering all the skills. If I'm coming as an investment manager and I'm trying to assess the possibility of giving you funding, I'm doing due diligence, and I'm looking at your team and you have very big gaps, I'm definitely not going to invest in that. But let's come now into hiring. Assume you have a good founding team or a team that is supporting that business well. You have to hire, if you're a startup, most likely that you have limited resources.
Yeah.
And so you're not necessarily going to hire expensive talent, right? So the most important thing for me is that you're looking for people that align with your mission. People need to buy into your mission. If you're developing a maternal product, they're actually passionate about it. And while you might not necessarily pay them as much as bigger businesses would be doing, these people would actually help improve that product. It's as though they actually own the business as well. So they share the mission and you're collectively pulling together to achieve your mission, right? The other thing is to make sure that your hiring shouldn't necessarily be based on, I don't think at the startup level, your hiring should be based on credentials. Or I went to the best schools, went to Harvard, and I am specialized in this. I feel like it's the time to hire generalists, right? Because you're trying to do so many things. You want people that are flexible and adaptable to be able to then, and have the right attitude actually, that they can, if it means you will be the accountant at some point, please go ahead and do it. If you will be fixing tech, people are willing to actually do whatever it takes to actually achieve the mission. But the most important thing, again, if I just need to go back to that founder comment that I made earlier, founders need to also know that they cannot do everything. So it's very important that they actually hire. The founder cannot be out there looking for investors, at the same time looking for customers, at the same time trying to develop the tech or building or running code or something. You need to hire people that can actually do some of this and do it well. And at times, even if you don't have money, there's several ways you can actually do it. You can give stake to some of these would-be employees, right? And they will have some ownership in the company and they would, be in it fully, I guess.
Do you think by giving them stake, sometimes it makes them more passionate? Or why would you suggest that?
Yeah, I would say it's not every employee that maybe would qualify for stake, but it's always encouraging. So I've seen businesses where when you join, you have this, it's like an employee benefit where you have like a banks do this really well. Employees have a stake in it. And the truth is, it actually builds motivation. I own a stake in this business, right? But there are hires that would be so valuable. So say you are missing a finance function, or you are missing someone that can actually support you with fundraising. And fundraising is hard. You need someone that has actually done it and got an experience, been able to close deals before, help other businesses raise funds. Such a person might actually be very hard or difficult to hire for an early stage business because they don't necessarily have the funding to afford that. In that case, then it might make sense that you are then giving some equity stake in return for the services that they're actually going to give you. So again, it's not a blanket application. It has to be case by case basis, but always when people have stake, they own it, they are fully invested.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They feel like it's their own company.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned how, of course, sometimes startups, you have limited resources, but now we live in a world where there's a lot of social media. Let me say,
Yes.
It's a digital world. There's AI, there's social media. So if a startup is trying to scale, but it doesn't have the deep pockets, as you've mentioned, what's the smartest way they can use social media and tech to grow fast without breaking the bank?
Yeah. We're living in interesting times. Interesting because you have the internet, which can make or break, right?
That's true.
And there are so many ways in which, or the current times actually offer an opportunity to grow your business at the least cost, right? And so, number one, going again back to customers, you can get more customers using the internet constructively. For example, we have LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You've seen a lot of businesses that are actually aggressively marketing to get more customers on board. But it's not just that marketing. You've seen strategies that actually work. Have you seen I've seen a gentleman that makes leather bags that takes people behind the scenes and shows them how the products are actually made. So they are telling stories. So you can actually use the internet to tell stories, and people buy into it. People do not buy product, they buy into brands, right? So if you build a really nice brand, people will buy into it. It might not necessarily be the best product, but you've marketed or told this story that then creates this brand that people want to associate with. Yeah.
No.
So on marketing, you could do that. But the other thing I think that I forgot to mention is automation. At times, there are products that are not products, but processes within the organization that you can actually automate. We have so many tools online that you can use that. But again, it's not necessarily to go automate everything. There are things that can be automated, others that require an individual to do. So, of course, embrace AI, embrace automation where it's necessary, to cut down on costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of social. There's a very huge social exchange happening when these people are dealing with startups and businesses.
Yeah.
There's the bit where you have to go talk to investors, and in certain points you can struggle with self-doubt. I know sometimes I struggle with imposter syndrome. So how do you go about that?
I struggle with imposter syndrome just to sit here today. So everybody faces
Everybody,
it.
yes.
Yes, everybody feels it actually. As a matter of fact, I dare say I feel even the most prolific, the guys who actually do so well, like public speaking, the people that do it so well, they go through imposter syndrome. Maybe even the president actually goes through it before he gives a speech. You'd never know. But ideally, the point is everybody goes through it. If we are watching Faith Kipyegon, the athlete, I can promise you before she starts to run, her stomach is probably filled with water or something. The nerves are all over the place. But what does she do? She still runs. And I think that's the most important thing, that while imposter syndrome is there, just do it scared. Confidence, nobody's born with confidence. You actually build it. So it is important that regardless of what you feel, you need to act. You need to put yourself out there and do something. And one of the things I normally do, because I also go through this in my work, I try to give myself small wins, and it's part of the acting. So you don't have to figure out, if you're developing a solution, it doesn't have to be a fully completed solution. You can start incrementally. So doing small tasks, give yourself win, it builds confidence, right? But the other thing is surround yourself with the right people. Get yourself a support system. Honestly, like, I think we all need it. You need to have friends who you can go share these challenges that you're going through with, and they build you up. Or even get other founders as well. Get into communities that have founders. You'll realize you're not the only one who's facing these challenges. You're not the only one who's dying with imposter syndrome. So you can get the support network or the support system that can help you then stand on your feet and be able to have impact. But again, back to that story, the athlete runs, regardless of what they feel.
Yeah.
But they still win, right?
You have said, do it scared,
Yes.
have a good community around you.
Yes.
And this seem like specific habits for people who actually win when it comes to startups and even the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
What are other mindsets that separate the winners and those who end up closing down?
You know, I would say people that keep pushing. And is it persistence, or what is it? Or I don't know what we can call it, but you will have so many no's in your journey as an entrepreneur, so many failures. But if you change your mindset, how you look at it, you actually can turn things around, right? We like to say failure is a data point. It's just a data point. What can you learn from it? And you can turn that data point into an insight that then pushes you forward. And so I think people that succeed the most, beyond the solution that they have, individually, they're really driven. If you tell them a no, they'll be like, fine, I'll keep pushing. And it's because they turn that no into, maybe I need to work on my solution. Maybe I need to say it better. Maybe I can simplify my messaging. And the next time they do it, they succeed. But I want to also come back to now the solution, the offering that they are giving to the customers. These guys are actually obsessed with their customers. They are constantly iterating their solution. So I'll give you an example. I don't know whether you know, what is the company? Blockbuster. There was Blockbuster and Netflix, all offering DVD rental services. But guess what? Have you had Blockbuster lately?
No.
Nobody has, right? But Netflix is a household name. And how have we gotten Netflix, or has Netflix gotten itself to be a household name in almost every house? Even old parents now have Netflix. Just because they listened to their customers and still iterated with changing times. So they started offering streaming services because customers started to shy away from, you don't have to go rent DVDs, right? So if you're a Blockbuster and you're still sticking to renting DVDs, and Netflix has moved on to streaming, people no longer need that actual DVD. You see how you're actually running out of business, right?
Yeah.
So again, you have to be fully invested in those customers, learn, understand them. If there are things that are changing with the changing times, adapt with it. You have to be very flexible to pivot if it requires that.
Yeah.
So you can't stick to that solution that you started with if times are changing.
Yeah. There's probably someone listening or watching, and they're like, Immanuel is saying the right things, and this is what I have done. But at the same time, where they're seated, they feel very demotivated, or they're even experiencing burnout.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Burnout, I made a certain point earlier. As a founder, you will burn out. Actually, beyond even everybody, all of us, you might actually burn out depending on how you do your things. A story is told of people that are cutting trees with a saw. One keeps cutting. Is it a saw or... let's just use a saw for purposes of this discussion.
Yeah.
One stops at specific intervals to keep sharpening that saw.
Yeah.
The other one keeps going. And the one that stops to relax and sharpen the saw actually makes more progress than the other one that keeps just cutting. The saw has become blunt, but they keep applying a lot of force. They get tired, they take more time, right? One of what that tells us is actually that you need to be able to prioritize your tasks properly. And tasks here would be, of course, running your business and the solutions that you're actually developing, that you still have moments of rest. And rest cannot come if you're just the person doing everything. Maybe you're one founder, you are the dev, the backend developer, you are the sales guy, you're the one out there fundraising, you're doing everything. You're not going to be able to rest. So for you to be able to rest and take breaks, you need to be able to separate you, the individual, from the business. You need to have people that can support you in running that business. So it goes back to hiring the right people, and making sure that you have the right people as founders or co-founders that are supporting you. So that will enable you to actually rest and take those breaks, because it's really important for everybody to take breaks and rejuvenate. But beyond that, if you have a supporting team that is actually fully qualified, you then have very little tasks that you're actually doing. You can concentrate on, say, for me, I'll work on partnerships. And yours is to go out there, look for partners. That will be funding partners or go-to-market partners, and someone else is doing something else. You won't burn out. Yeah.
Okay, so it's okay to rest.
Perfectly okay.
Don't be the boss.
Perfectly
don't be the social
okay.
media manager. Don't do everything. It's okay to hire and take intervals and just rest.
Yes. If I could just add something, that business should be able to still run without you.
Yes.
So you have the right team, you have the right processes that you can take the rest, and the business successfully runs. Yeah.
So before we close up, I just have a few questions. Don't overthink it. Yeah?
Okay.
Just quick ones, yes?
Yeah.
So what's one book or resource every entrepreneur should read?
I would recommend The Lean Startup.
The
Lean Startup.
The Lean Startup.
Yeah. The Lean Startup, because it actually gives the concept of building a sustainable business, and from conducting lean experiments. We've just been talking about testing out your solution, to proving the business model before you can. So it brings out the concept of organic growth really nicely, from testing it out in a small environment or few customers before you then start growing that. Because as you test, you're seeing results, and you can tweak your product. You can pivot if it requires so. Yeah.
So let's imagine this. All the information you have right now is given to Immanuel Momanyi of JQuat Karen.
Oh.
And then I
With
hand you yes, with the hair. And then I hand you $500. What's the first thing you do with it?
Oh wow. I would start a business. I would start my own startup. I don't want to give ideas of what it is, because someone listening would go do it. Yeah. But the one thing I like to say is, we are in the digital age. So whatever the business that you are developing, let it have some digital element. And I'll definitely do that. So I will be taking advantage of the internet, developing a solution, be it in healthcare or not, and using technology to make sure that it's a really nice, scalable business. Again, if you don't use technology, it hinders your scale, because, say, imagine businesses that are brick and mortar, like hospitals, for example. While some scale, it is so difficult, because for you to set that hospital, the capex is high. And so you have to get some investors that are willing to give you a lot of money to be able to do that. So just applying technology. So it will be the business that applies technology and takes advantage of the digital age that we're living in. Yeah.
With all your years of experience and dealing with very many startups and entrepreneurs, what's the, for lack of a better word, worst piece of advice you've ever had been given to a startup or to as a young entrepreneur?
Let me think. You know what? I think entrepreneurs are always told in the accelerator programs that they are in, or the support programs that they get from different entrepreneur support organizations, people are always told, the fast movers advantage, fast to market always wins. It's not the case. We have how many businesses have been fast in the market and they actually did not succeed. So I feel like, while it not necessarily maybe my worst piece of advice, but if I think, again, just putting in the context of our conversation, I think if you're fast in the market, that's still fine because you have the opportunity to get customers fast and you're the name that people get to know fast. But you still have to be adaptable. You need to be able to be willing to pivot if it requires so. So while it's good to go fast, be willing to adapt and constantly improve your product. You know, it's a version 1.0. Let's see version 2.0, version 3.0. Because if you don't, it's going to be like a blockbuster under Netflix, where Netflix changes with the changing times and Blockbuster doesn't, and Netflix has taken over, right? Yeah. So you have to be adaptable. Again, maybe it's the summary of our conversation. And I could summarize it this way: test, iterate, and adapt. So we've talked about how times change. And even before that, how you need to actually prove your business model, like prove it in a small market. Prove that they actually, the problem is actually big enough and that people are willing to pay for it. Once you do that, iterate, because in the process of proving that business model, you have feedback that you're collecting. So iterate, develop your version 2.0, or pivot if you need to, right? And then the third one is adapt. Adapt to the changing times. So if this solution that you have is no longer working, be fair to yourself and your business to adapt to the changing times. Otherwise, if you don't, you're not going to keep growing. You're probably going to stagnate at some point. So yeah, if I could summarize our conversation, just make sure you're testing, you're iterating, and you're adapting with the changing times. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So there's so much we've learned from this episode today. One thing I'm taking home is that the entrepreneurial life is a journey, a very long journey.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people involved. There's social aspects as well. The times you feel like you can't do it, just you, as you've been told, do it scared. Keep pushing,
do it anyway.
But still remember to rest. Have a wonderful team around you and a beautiful community. This has been Connect One-on-One with Youth Plus Radio. See you next time.